And then came that moment when Russian troops were poised to kick Constantinople. It's just down the road. And that was what was promised to Russia. And it was at that moment in October 1917 that they struck. For whatever other reasons, this is the one I'm concerned about most of all. To prevent the Russian troops from taking Constantinople. So they offered you Constantinople from the front door, and then from the back door they stabbed Russia. That's Dajjal, the master deceiver with a PhD in deception. Our eschatology, which comes out of the hadith of the Prophet, Allah's blessings be upon him, and on which I based my book, Jerusalem in the Quran, tells us that Dajjal will pursue his mission through 3 stages. His objective is to establish his rule over the world, and then to claim that he is the true Messiah, when he will not be. He will be the false Messiah. In stage 1, he attempted to rule the world from an island. This is our eschatology. And I identified that island as Britain. The Salafis, of course, have come after me. But my identification of the island as Britain has stood firm. And the world of Islamic scholarship out there has not been able to refute me. And so now we have an explanation from our Islamic eschatology. We have an explanation. We want to know what's the explanation that the political scientist has for the emergence of Pax Britannica out of nowhere. Our explanation is this is Dajjal's phase 1. And in phase 1, not only did Britain become the ruling state in the world, but more importantly, Britain ruled money. That the control over money, the control over the monetary system was vital for achieving rule over the world. And so came the sterling pound. And then we saw a movement of change or transformation from Britain to the United States. It didn't happen overnight. And Pax Americana replaced Pax Britannica. Why did this happen? What is the explanation? We're waiting for an explanation from the political scientist. But our eschatology tells us that this is Dajjal in phase 2. And in the same way that in phase 1 he had to have a monetary policy, so too in phase 2 the dollar replaced the sterling pound. And Bretton Woods was used to demolish Britain as an empire. And our eschatology tells us that Pax Americana cannot last forever. No. In fact, Pax Americana must last for a much shorter period of time than Pax Britannica before it gives way to a third and a last phase or stage of Dajjal's mission. I have identified it as the movement from Pax Americana to an attempt by Israel to replace the United States as the ruling state in the world. We are conscious of the fact that Israel already has every single American politician in his pocket. You cannot succeed as a politician in the United States if you stand up and utter one word against Israel. You'll be finished, demolished. And if the United States is today the ruling state in the world, and Israel is already ruling the world from behind the curtain or the hijab. But in stage 3, Israel has to come out from behind the curtain and emerge as a successor to the United States of America. And therefore, the US dollar will have to be demolished. That demolition job is not happening by accident. The US dollar is being consciously and deliberately demolished in order for the petrodollar monetary system to be replaced by a new monetary system controlled by the banking system in the world, which is also under Israel's control. And so from these two perspectives, Israel is already well on its way. But Israel will have to wage great wars, because Britain did and the United States did. And that's where we are now. That's where we are now. If Turkey were to invade Syria, as I have expected it to do for some time now, I'm surprised it has not happened as yet, then the countdown will begin. When that countdown begins, when the wars start, then I want to say that Russia's moment in history would have arrived. Russia's moment in history, like no other moment before it, would have arrived. This is Russia's historic moment in history, when these great wars start. Because Russia has a role in the end time. The Prophet and the Quran did not use the term Russia. There is a chapter of the Quran, or the better word would be surah, entitled Room, pronounced R-O-O-M, Room. And the Quran speaks positively about Rome. It says that Rome has been defeated by the Persian Empire, but within a brief period of time, and the Prophet said between 3 and 9, Rome will be victorious. And the Salafis can do what they can. They won't succeed in identifying Rome with Washington and with NATO, because that's what they're trying to do. At the time when the Quran was revealed, there was no Western Christianity yet developed. No. At the time when the Quran was revealed, they were still together as one Christian world in Constantinople, with some divisions between them. But the big break did not take place as yet. So at the time when the Quran was revealed, Rome was Byzantium, without a shadow of a doubt. And if one part of the Christian world chose to break away and to dance to every tune that Dajjal played, and the Quran prohibits us from maintaining friendly ties with them, and the Prophet said that in the end time you'll make an alliance with Rome. The Prophet said that in the end time you will make an alliance with Rome. The implication is that Rome is the Eastern Orthodox Christian world. But someone put a fly in the ointment. I don't think it was by accident. I think it was by design, to distort our capacity to read history properly. And that was the Ottoman conquest of Constantinople. The Prophet prophesied. He said that you will conquer Constantinople, but he never said that you'll have to fight Christians to do it. He didn't say so. He never said that you will have to fight Christians to conquer Constantinople. He said that he will conquer Constantinople. And he praised the commander, and he praised the army. But the conquest of Constantinople, when we study the timeline in Islamic eschatology, belongs to the end time, not 550 years ago. And yet the Ottomans were successful for the last 500 years in brainwashing the entire world of Islam, illa masha'Allah, into believing that the prophesied conquest of Constantinople, prophesied by the Prophet, occurred in 1453, which is false. Which is false. Number one, because it does not fit the timeline. The conquest of Constantinople comes after what the Christians call Armageddon. Has Armageddon occurred as yet? No? No. It comes after the Armageddon, which the Prophet called the Malhama. I've been listening to the news. I've not heard that the Armageddon has occurred as yet. And so how could the conquest of Constantinople, prophesied by the Prophet, have occurred? But there are other reasons as well for rejecting this majority opinion. How could the Prophet praise a man who conquers Constantinople, and the first thing that he does when he enters the city is to take the greatest cathedral of Rome, a cathedral which has been used for worship for 1,000 years. Hagia Sophia, is it Hagia or Hagia? Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. 1,000 years. And this is the greatest cathedral of Rome, of whom the Quran speaks positively. And shamefully and disgracefully and manifestly sinfully, and I choose my words with great care, convert this cathedral into a masjid, to the eternal shame of the world of Islam. How could the Prophet praise such a man? No, the conquest of Constantinople is still to occur. And when the conquest of Constantinople is to occur, it will come to an alliance of Christians and Muslims jointly. And when we enter Constantinople, if I'm still alive, the first thing that we will do, if we reach first, is to say to the Christians, this is your church, this is your cathedral. The second thing that we'll do is to apologize to the Christian world for 500 years of the shameful use of this church as a masjid, in defiance of the Quran, in defiance of the Prophet, in defiance of the companions of the Prophet, using some fictitious rigmarole legal argument. And the third thing that we will do is that since the Prophet himself referred to the city as Constantinople, لَتَفْتَهَنَّ الْقُنْسْتَنْتِنِيَةِ, that's the Arabic. It becomes the sunnah or the way for all Muslims to refer to that city as Constantinople. Mustafa Kemal could do what he wants. He cannot prohibit Imran Hosein. No. And so the name of the city will return to Constantinople when that conquest takes place. And we're moving now towards this historic moment. Russia's moment in history has arrived, and I've come to Moscow to share with you. This is our insight from Islamic eschatology. We have experts in Christian eschatology here, And I'd love to hear whether they also share the view that Russia's moment in history has arrived. I think